Hi, guys. Wow, I can't believe so many of you guys are here at noon Central Standard Time on a Tuesday during the week. We did not think so many people would come, but hey, I'm all for it. Got to be able to perform in multiple environments. So today's class, maybe so many people are here because we were supposed to do it last month and then we didn't have it. So anyways, we're going to go over some questions. We went through with all our different study notes, ABA tutors, Danielle being one of them, questions and concepts that people seem to confuse the most and are most asked. Maybe if you're in the collective, you might already know these things, but it's always good to review and go over them. So, and I would say these are definitely principles that are not necessarily the nitty gritty of getting into the detail. These are like, you have to understand these things that we're going to go over today. So they're both things that people asked about and things that are like core for you to understand and be able to apply to multiple questions. So the first question we got, or I guess I shouldn't say question, I guess concept that Danielle, along with some of our other tutors, voted that we are getting the most questions on is MO versus SD. So before we even go any further, let's see, what is an MO? An MO stands for?
Motivating operation.
Brilliant. Motivating operation. SD stands for?
Discriminative stimulus.
Good. Discriminative, and by the way, I probably spelled things wrong. Discriminative stimulus. Why they called it an SD and not a DS, I don't know, but that's just the way it is. So we have motivating operation and discriminative stimulus. Now, what is important before we go any further in this is for you guys to understand the four-term contingency. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you guys know the basics of ABA, literally the basic ABCs of ABA is exactly that, ABC. So we're going to draw out, and I hope, by the way, if you've never been to a study notes ABA class before, you take the notes with us. So get a piece of paper out, get your pens, glitter, stickers, highlighters, glue sticks if you really want to go crazy. I don't know. They're about to take these notes together. So we have the if we have a three-term contingency, that is our antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Okay. Now, when we get into MOs and SD, we're actually breaking down the antecedent into two parts, okay? So now we have the MO, the SD, the behavior, and the consequence, okay? So that is essentially so the first row above with the three, that's a three-term contingency. And then when we break it down further, it becomes a four-term contingency. Now, what does this all mean? That's important to know. So the motivating operation answers the question. Do I give a fuck about consequence being offered? The discriminative stimulus. Is the reinforcer available? Can I have it? So I'm going to show you guys a real life example, and we're going to go through and label the MOs versus the SDs. How the F did Pavlov get in here? It is completely locked up at the stairs of the doggy gate. I have no idea, but that's okay. He doesn't breathe as loud as Cooper. So we have MO, SD, behavior, and consequence. We're going to label it. Here's a real example that's been going on in someone's life who's close to me. I'm not going to say names, but someone right now, I'm going to tell you guys the story first, and then we're going to put it into our 4-term contingency, okay? All right, so someone I know currently has been in a lot of pain the last 2 days, all right? Right by their rectum or asshole, they have some abscess kind of thing, boil. It's Danielle, everyone. She's in so much pain. She has a real pain in the ass, quite literally, okay? She is, I'm kidding, it's not Danielle. Let's just say it's me for fun purposes, okay? So when you go to the bathroom, it hurts. When you wipe, when you're sitting on your ass, it hurts. Anyone else in the chat? Let's see. Anyone else had an abscess on their asshole? Let's make whoever it is know they're not alone. Okay, let's make sure we're all in this together. So, in a lot of pain. Okay. Now this person's in so much pain. What do you think is valuable to them in the moment if they are in a lot of pain?
Relief.
Relief. Yes. Okay, good. Yes. Okay. I have not seen one person be honest in the chat and say that they've had it before. Not yet. Okay. That's thankfully no. Okay. So good. So the person who has, okay. Leslie says always, Leslie just won a prize for being honest. Thank you, Leslie. All right. Please send us an email to contact@STUDYNOTESABA so we can at least send you a sticker to make you feel better about your past history with the anal abscess. Anyway, so we have, so let's say you have this really bad pain. What's going to be valuable to that moment is relief, right? So the MO is also our background information. So let's say here we have increase in pain in rectum, okay? What would be valuable in that moment? Relief from pain. So the MO is what is going to change the value of that potential consequence. Based on the fact that you have a lot of pain in your butthole, is that consequence of relief from pain going to be valuable? Hell yeah. Until you've had it. And I'm sure anyone who admitted in the chat that they've had it understands how valuable that relief is. Okay, so now, so we have the MO, which changes the value. The relief from pain sounds really great. Now, if you're someone who's never had one, you wouldn't really give a shit about the idea of having relief from pain from an anal abscess, whatever it's called. So now, the SD, that is what signals reinforcement. Okay, so let's say the situation is you have a lot of pain in your butt. The SD, what do you guys think is something that might be an SD in this situation? Something that's signaling reinforcement.
Hemorrhoid cream.
A doctor.
A donut.
Okay. So some people are saying one of the SDs might be tylenol.
All of these in the butt wipes, meds, doctors.
All of these are great ones.
Vodka. I like that. Thank you, Danielle James.
Sitz bath.
Sits back.
Right. All right. SD. There can be more than one SD in a situation. Right? Okay. These are all SDs. Now, I also, this is a perfect opportunity to teach you about S deltas. Okay. S delta is anything else that is not the SD. So let's say someone says, oh, you're in a lot of pain. I could get you in with a podiatrist. Anyone know what a podiatrist is? That is for your
Foot.
Feet. For your feet.
Exactly. S delta. Podiatrist. S delta. The tree outside. Okay. So these are all available at the same time, right? Now, someone who has this pain never has given a shit about to find out who's the doctor who works with buttholes. Now, suddenly, anyone know what the doctor is called who works with buttholes?
Is it a proctologist?
You are brilliant, Terry. Was that you said it?
Yes.
Get it, girl. All right, so another SDE would be a proctologist. Right? Because of this MO, suddenly this random person is signaling reinforcement for you. On any other day of the year, you would never give a shit to find out who's an actual proctologist. Right? So that's your SD. Anything else in the environment is an S delta. Well, it could be Tylenol, could be a SIDVAS, it could be a proctologist. But for the sake of this, let's say it's the proctologist, just to make it an easy learning example. What do you think you're going to do? What behavior are you going to engage in to come into contact with this relief from pain?
Make an appointment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Call. Make an
I have a
appointment.
question. So do the stimuli under the SD column, can they kind of hover over becoming S deltas and SDs? Like, can the Tylenol become an S delta if I've used it before and it doesn't work? So it kind of just like goes back and forth between being an SD and an S delta. Is that possible?
Absolutely. So that's the important thing. Beautiful question, Diana, because an MO is always changing, right? Always changing. What is valuable to you in one moment, you won't give a shit about in the next moment, right? So, and obviously this comes from our learned history, right? Like you're like, in the past, Advils worked for me when I have pain in my butt. So you'll take the Advil, that might be an SD when you're in pain again. And I took a Motrin, it did nothing. So that's an S delta, right? I took a Benadryl, it was an S delta, it didn't do anything for the pain in my butt. I went to a Starbucks, it didn't do anything for the pain in my butt. So it's always changing. Now, my current MO is deprivation of sleep. Doing these night shifts, I'm exhausted. So for me, what's an SD for like a proctologist would be an S delta for me to help me get satiated on sleep, right? A bed is an SD for me. So it's always changing. That's what's really important to notice, that what's valuable to you in 1 second may not be valuable to you right after. In fact, right after Danielle, it's not really Danielle, I'm just learning her name again. What Danielle goes to the proctologist, gets this thing drained or whatever they do, relief from pain. She's not going to really give a shit to go to the proctologist again. It is now going to be an S delta in whatever else she's dealing with, right? So the MO is that background information that's going to change the value of the consequence, right? And the SD is in that moment, what is signaling reinforcements available? All right, so let's do one more example since Diana asked that question. Let's say the example is you are deprived of food. Diana, question for you. What do you think would be a valuable consequence in this scenario?
Access to food.
Access to food. So by the way, when we're talking about MOs, we go from deprivation, meaning not having enough of something, to being satiated, meaning we have it, okay? So the idea would be access to food or satiation of food, meaning you're no longer hungry. Can you give me an example? I mean, there's many you could do of an SD maybe in this scenario.
So the SD could be a plate of food on the counter.
Perfect. So the SD,
Or rather the sight of it.
right,
Right.
or the food sitting there. That's pretty like signaling availability, like, yo, if you're hungry, I'm right here, eat me. Okay, now what behavior do you think you're going to engage in if you are deprived of food?
Reaching for it.
Reaching for it. Eat it, right? And now the consequence is you're satiated of food. Now let's start a new line with this. let's say this time the MO background information is you're satiated on food. You just had Thanksgiving dinner. You're super hungry. Okay. You could still have the same thing here. You could still have a plate of food in front of you. Right? And the idea being you could eat it if you want. In that moment with this current MO, is that valuable to you? The idea, it's like, okay, I already have a lot of food. And then we're offering you the consequence of like, hey, here's a plate of food. You could be full on food. Is that valuable to you when you're already full on food?
No.
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 So that's when we get further, which we're not going to get into today, but that's when we're going to talk about, it's actually going to abate your behavior. If you're full, it's going to abate your behavior. If you're hungry, it's going to evoke your behavior of eating the food. But you see from let's say this example over here was at noon, right? Being deprived of food. At 12:30, you're now full. And so what things are changing? The plate of food is no longer an SD to you, right? Or I guess, I mean, it would be an SD because it's still there, but it's not valuable to you. So that's when you get into establishing and abolishing operations, which is a different class on its own. But to understand the difference of the MO being that background information of like what's happened before that would change the value of, the consequences being offered. And the SD is what's signaling like, hey, we can meet that need that you have. We're signaling availability of reinforcement right here. And that's always changing. All right, so that's our MO versus SD. All right, next question that we had or concept was response versus stimulus prompt. All right, someone call out a color to me.
Orange.
Blue.
Hello.
I heard orange, and I'm also biased to orange is my favorite color. So we're going to talk about stimulus versus response prompts, okay? Put prompt into book. So we have stimulus versus response prompts. I need to make it a little cuter just for color's sake, for visual. Okay, stimulus versus response prompt. Let me pull these blinds down a little because like the sun's hitting my iPad and I can't even see what I'm writing. Oh, there it is. Okay. So stimulus versus response prompt. A prompt. Who knows what a prompt is? Anyone?
A command, like an instruction.
It's
Antecedent
something that
stimuli.
increases the likelihood of correct responding.
So what it
Temporary
actually,
supplemental instruction.
who said that?
Danielle James.
Danny James, that's hot. Email us. You just want some reinforcement stickers. That's exactly it. Okay. So a prompt in the first place, I should write that in the middle, is a supplemental antecedent stimulus to increase likelihood. I think I spelled likelihood wrong. My brain's not really working in spelling. That's cool. To increase likelihood of correct response. You do these all the time, you don't even recognize it, okay? Now, the main difference between them is a stimulus prompt acts directly on the stimulus. Let's see if you guys can derive a relation. So if a stimulus prompt acts directly on a stimulus, What do you think a response prompt acts directly on?
Response.
You guys are so smart. Acts directly on the response. So I'm going to give a pretty basic example to start off. So again, everything we do in ABA does go back to your ABCs, okay? So you know what response you want someone to engage in. So let's say initially I am saying, okay. All right, and I say, okay, I'm on shape still. Hold on. Orange flower. What else should I draw? How appropriate I am today. A blue coffee cup. And my final thing will be the work with me, baby. Work with me. Okay. It's a baseball hat, okay? So let's say the SD or the antecedent that I provide to an individual is I say, hey, touch the blue coffee cup. What behavior am I actually wanting them to engage in here?
Listener behavior.
Yeah, definitely listener response, listener behavior. But more specifically, if I'm telling them to touch the blue cup, which one of these do I want them to touch?
Verbal.
The blue cup.
Exactly, the
Touch
blue
the
cup,
blue
right?
cup.
So if I put this into my basic ABC, right? My antecedent is touch blue cup. The behavior, I want them to touch the blue cup. So I'm gonna put this as like a consequence. We'll give them reinforcement. So sometimes if an individual can't do it on their own, we have to use prompts. We have to add something else into this area over here. So I say, touch the blue cup. If I'm going to do a response prompt, I'm going to do something that acts directly on that response, right? So the response of actually them physically touching the blue cup. So what does a response prompt look like? I'm doing something to the actual response. So maybe I take Hannah's hand and I say, touch the blue cup. And I take her hand and I touch the blue cup, right? I'm doing something to the actual response. And I'm like, great, you did touch the blue cup. That's awesome, right? Because there's also some learning going on there, the fact that I had to prompt. Or maybe there's other things going on in the environment. Maybe, you know, it's masking what she knows. Maybe there's competing stimuli in the environment. Maybe there's a fly in the room. Maybe there's a hot guy. I don't know. So that is a response prompt. We are doing something directly to the response. Now, so it could be that. Another response prompt could be if it's telling someone exactly how to respond, either by physically taking their hand. I could have written instruction that says, touch the blue cup, right? I'm telling you exactly how to respond, right? So it could be full physical, it could be partial physical. Maybe Hannah doesn't need as much help. I could just take her elbow and she could guide it towards the blue cup. But I'm doing, if it's a response prompt in this example, I'm not doing anything to the stimuli. I still have the 3 cards sitting there, right? So that's a response prompt. I'm doing something to the response, right? I could gesture, whatever it is, but I'm letting you know how I need you to respond. Guiding your actual response.
Hey, can you do me a favor and mute everyone? Because I can't mute the person that's talking. Sorry.
There you go. So now we're talking about, that was a response prompt. You're doing something directly to the response for them to engage right. Now, let's say we still have the same ABCs. And by the way, where would the prompts be located? They'd be located right here within the antecedent area, right? It's adding something else. I've given the SD, I've given the demand, I've given the instruction, and I need them, that I'm gonna either like actually act on the response itself, whatever it is. Now, a stimulus prompt is when you do something to the actual stimulus, okay? And we have 3 different types that we talk about. Okay, so I'm gonna write 1, 2, 3. Can anyone in the chat write down the 3 different stimulus prompts we have? Karen, that's hot. We have position, movement, and redundant. Let's see if you spelled it right. Redundancy. I'm feeling really insecure with my spelling lately. I don't know what's going on. So we have positional, movement, and redundancy. These are the 3 types of stimulus prompts we have. And these are all different things we could do to the stimulus that we want them to respond to. So let's say we have a positional stimulus prompt. Okay. Now, basically, actually, with the way that these cards are, let's say I have pretty Hannah sitting over here. Okay. So these cards are in front of her. Positionally, I want her to touch the pink hat. The other cards, right, if she's sitting at the end over here, the pink hat, you guys should be able to see that the pink hat is closer to her. I've done something to the stimulus itself that I want her to touch. And I've positionally placed it to increase the likelihood that she's going to touch that one, right? If you guys see here, the pink hat is closest to Hannah down here. That's a positional stimulus prompt. I'm doing something to the actual stimulus, being the card. There you go. Now, a movement prompt, stimulus prompt. Again, I'm doing something to the actual stimulus. I'm not controlling her response. I'm not taking her hand and touching it, right? That would be a response prompt. I'm doing something to the stimulus to make it stand out. So let's say I'm able to move the card a little bit, right? Like, hey, touch. And it might not work as well with cards, but like, hey, you know, touch the pink hat. Maybe like I have that card moving a little bit. I always say hashtag Blues Clues. You guys know when you watch Blues Clues, anyone in the past, and it's like, he's like, hey guys, I'm looking for a letter. Does anyone know where the letter R is? And like the letter R is like shaking on the tree, right? And you're like, it's increasing the likelihood that the individual is going to say on the tree, right? Because it's shaking right there. It's drawing attention to it by movement. I also do this with my dogs. Sometimes I want them like to come eat their dinner. So like my dog's food like sits on a little like, it like kind of holds it up. Like it's a stand and then the bowl sit in it. I'll like kick underneath the bowl to like kind of make it shake, like drawing attention to my dog's food bowl to increase likelihood they go eat. Now I'm not like a response prompt. I'm not like taking their mouth and like opening it for them, making them eat. I'm just drawing attention to it by a movement stimulus prompt, doing something to the stimulus. Now last, but definitely not least, and by the way, this one is why in Study Notes ABA, we tell you to what was I gonna say? Oh, Pavlov. Shh. How did he even get in here? Shh. Something evoked his response. All right, so.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Like on a digital device, would a flashing stimulus be considered a movement stimulus?
So in this
Like
next
instead
example, I think you might be perfectly leading us to our next thing. So let's say, and by the way, maybe not all of these are an option and depending on what you're working with, right? Maybe I'm literally about to kill him. This is a time to text Eliran. One of my.
I'll text him right now.
Perfect. I don't know how he got up here. He was locked out. Okay, so maybe like, for example, like while I'm doing it, like drawing on this device right now, it's not the easiest for me to do a movement prompt, right? So maybe like I might try a redundancy prompt. So let's say, who's doodling all over the screen? So let's say that I want, again, okay, Hannah, sorry, your camera's on. You're an SD for me, signaling availability of reinforcement if I talk to you. So I see you. By the way, guys, SD versus S delta. Any of you guys with your screens off are S deltas for me to call on you. You're telling me like I'm not available for reinforcement to answer your questions. So redundancy prompt. This time I say, hey, I want you to touch the blue cup. Okay. Now, redundancy means I am doing something to make that stimulus more redundant or to stick out more or to, you know, call your attention more. So maybe it's going to be like this. Either it could be that, let's say, I could have it something simple that, let's say, all of these are black and white. Maybe my blue cup is like the most like salient, right? Sticking out, whatever it is. If those are black, that could be an example of a redundancy prompt, making it like that. Maybe I have the blue cup card sitting on a Post-it behind it, a neon Post-it, right? That kind of makes that one stick out, where the other ones are just like, oh, okay. Oh, well, I'm going to take the one that has the most, you know, thing towards it. That could be an example of redundancy prompt. Sometimes you might put a star next to something to help you remember it, right? Redundancy prompt. Arrows, something that makes it stick out more to increase the likelihood. You're doing something to the stimulus to make it stick out much more. All right. That is an example of a redundancy stimulus prompt.
Liat, are there
Yep.
any like AKAs for position prompts? Sometimes I see it as proximity. I don't know if that's like a correct AKA or is that just
Yeah,
like...
that's perfect. Yeah, you could do a hashtag for that. You could do it as a positional proximity, closeness, how close it is to someone, how, you know, and you do these to yourself all the time, right? So like, for example, if you want to not forget your lunch in the morning, maybe you stick your lunch the night before, assuming nothing needs to be refrigerated, like literally sitting on the, like, you actually have to like step over it to get to your front door, right? You're positionally placing it. You're doing something to that stimulus that you need to engage with. It's like pick up the lunch so that you're going to do it, right? We do these things all the time for ourselves. Like, shit, I can't forget this. Like right here, I have a Post-it telling me to do something on my computer. Danielle has like 5,000. We do it all the time. Now I'm going to show you guys one example that we like often show that people, it kind of blows their mind. And that's also why I think I started saying a second ago, when my ADD kicked in, why we tell you guys to use different colors, fonts, glitter, stickers within your notes. Stimulus ABA, Study Notes ABA, like that's literally, we are all about stimulus redundancy prompts. And you could do it positionally too. If you want to be like testing yourself on stuff, go ahead, place it on your wall in front of you, that it's going to be in front of you, that you engage in it more likely, right? You do it all the time. So this is the one example that we give often. And it goes like this. So let's say you have your, this is your refrigerator door. This is an LG 6500 model refrigerator. Actually, no, I don't want to do a fridge. I want to do a Cooper book. Okay, this is your Cooper. I usually like to actually, oh, that's nice. I love when the pen stops working. What just happened? It obviously was working for a second. This is cool. Hold on. By the way, we call this a behavior chain interruption strategy when you're working on something and then something interrupts you and you can continue, but that's okay. It's not going to throw me off because I have an antecedent intervention. I got a second one. See, I just pull Apple pencils out of my ass.
I was gonna say, do you want to stop sharing and then share again and see if it picks it back up? Or check?
No, because I don't think it's a sharing thing. It's a,
Is it a Wi-Fi thing?
no, it's a like not actually working thing.
Oh, check your Bluetooth.
All right, let me do a little check-in with you guys then. Are you guys learning something while I get this out? Have you learned anything new?
Sometimes if you plug it,
Mine doesn't plug in, it's magnetic. That Apple Pencil.
You're still gonna have to do the Bluetooth and connect the pencil. That,
Okay, here I am, guys. Let's see. Can we pause the recording for a second so no one has to watch this whole?
go.
Nice. Okay, so over here we have our 2 Cooper books. I'm gonna act chill, the fact that that square did not complete, and that one too, or rectangle. Okay, so this is your Cooper. Here's like the graph picture on it. All right. So let's say the behavior you want someone to engage in is I want you guys to read your Cooper book. All right. I want you to read your Cooper book. I want you to read chapter 7. I want you guys to write this down because it's really important. Okay. This side is going to say, response prompt. This side is going to say stimulus prompt. And by the way, in case you've never been to a STUDYNOTESABA class, we write the word light bulb in the chat when something's like, holy shit, my brain just lit up. I get that. So we have 2 of the exact same Cooper books here. I know they're not the same size in this image, but they should be. Okay, we have 2 of the same things. And the behavior I want someone to engage in is read Cooper book. Okay, that's the behavior. So a response prompt, what might that look like? And I want you to pay attention. If you're on your phone texting right now, the test might try fuck you with this. I don't know. Maybe this should make it more salient to you to pay attention right now. Let's say you have a Post-it note on there.
Could you also put it in a place where it's like clearly visible, like right on top of your desk?
Perfect. That would be a stimulus prompt. Exactly. Putting it there positionally. Exactly. But right now we're doing a response prompt, and a response prompt, you are telling someone exactly how to, okay, but look at this. Let's say they both have a yellow Post-it note on it. Okay. Right now, these look like the same thing. The behavior I want them to engage in is reading the Cooper book. I'm going to do something that is going to make one a response prompt versus a stimulus prompt. Right now, when there's just a yellow stick Post-it on both of them, that's a stimulus prompt. I'm doing something to make the book stick out more. What type of stimulus prompt is this?
Redundant.
Exactly. It's a redundant stimulus prompt. Now, as soon as I do this to this one, and I write on that Post-it, it has now become a response prompt. So on the left, it's a response prompt because who can figure out why?
It's considered verbal. It's written.
Exactly. It's a verbal response prompt. I'm telling them exactly how to respond, right? I'm telling them this is what you need to do. This is your response. Whereas on the stimulus prompt side, it's just a yellow Post-it. I'm not telling you how to respond, but I'm doing something to the stimulus, the book, to make it stick out more, okay? Here's an example of a response prompt versus a stimulus prompt. Now, In any teaching example, does it mean you're only going to be able to use one? No, right? In fact, going back to this example, if I wanted you to touch the blue cup, I could use a response prompt. I could take your hand to touch the blue cup. I could write down the instruction, touch the blue cup, right? Response prompt. Or I could do something to the actual stimulus and light it up like this, right? Put the highlighting around it, whatever it is. But when you get a test question, they're going to tell you about one thing they've done, right? They might say, Liat wanted Danielle to touch the blue cup in the example. So Liat takes Danielle's hand and touches the cup, but also has highlighted the blue cup and put it closer to her to hopefully increase the likelihood she responds. What is the highlighting of the blue cup considered? Right? Right there, I just gave a response prompt that I took her hand, but they're not asking about that. That's just extra. I told you that I positioned it closer to her. They didn't ask about that. They asked about the highlighting part. So you would say the best answer here would be it is a, most specifically,
Stimulus prompt?
yep, a
Redundancy.
redundancy stimulus prompt. Exactly. All right. So that's how the test works. And what Casey just wrote in the chat is very important. It is only considered a prompt if, as a result, the person engages in the correct behavior. So I could try draw all these arrows, the yellow around it, try move their hand towards the blue cup. But we only know if it was an actual prompt if the end result is them engaging in the correct behavior, right? So you could say it's an attempted prompt. I tried prompting them, but it only served as an actual prompt if they engaged in the correct behavior.
So if the client touches the hat, it completely negates the fact that the highlighted around the cup was a redundancy prompt. Like it becomes a it's not a prompt anymore.
Right. Technically, I mean, sure, you attempted to use a prompt, but it didn't serve as a prompt. So it wasn't an actual prompt. But
So
yes,
it's like kind of like the same concept as reinforcement. It only makes it a reinforcement if it increased the likelihood of behavior.
Exactly.
Like that same concept. Okay.
Exactly. Like you might have thought the M&M was actually the reinforcer, but it's not actually, unless you know. And the same goes for this. Exactly. Brilliant.
So if it's ineffective, then it doesn't count.
Right.
Okay.
Would it just be a stimulus? Would it just be a stimulus?
Right. It doesn't negate from the fact that you definitely tried to make it a prompt, right? But in technicality, like probably if you were in your clinic, you'd be like, you would probably like in regular clinic talk, you'd be like, dude, I prompted him and he still didn't get it right, right? But in technicality for the test, you need to know that it's not actually a prompt unless they engage in the correct behavior. Even if it was because they got engaged in it because you had hand over hand that they got it right, right? So that's just like a very, and it's not important as to like what you would call it then. I would just say like, there's like no specific name. It's just a technicality for the test that it's not a prompt if they didn't engage in the correct behavior. All right. You definitely attempted to prompt the behavior, but you can't call it an actual prompt, like a noun, if it didn't serve in them answering correctly. All right. There's one other, pardon?
You got lots of light bulbs.
Oh, okay, good.
Could it, sorry, can I ask, would it be just a stimulus, just something you did and
Sure,
it's just a stimulus?
I mean, yeah, you could really call anything a stimulus. Like
Everything in the
anything around
environment
you.
is a stimulus.
What'd you say?
Thank you.
I was just saying that
I just
everything in
think-
your environment is a stimulus.
Yep.
So yes, it would be just a stimulus. Yep.
You're pretty safe saying any single thing around you. I mean, you could literally say stimulus, like this Apple Pencil box that's open, this broken Apple Pencil stimulus. My next example I'm getting to, I'm going to be using two stimulus to show you guys something. I'm really obsessed with these dog toys lately, and I saw one of the examples, people getting confused between mixed and multiple schedules of reinforcement. And so I have not found anything better to show this example than these specific dog toys. So compound schedules of reinforcement, a lot of people see these as very complicated, right? So compound schedules of reinforcement, this is understanding. Well, first of all, you have to understand what a schedule of reinforcement is, right? Schedule of reinforcement is how often are you being reinforced for whatever behavior it is you engage in. So when you answer a raise your hand in class, is your teacher calling on you every time? If yes, your behavior is being reinforced on an FR1, fixed ratio 1, every single time. Or are you being reinforced on a variable ratio 10, about every 10 times you raise your hand, right? So you need to understand that's what a schedule of reinforcement is. It's talking about how often you're getting reinforced by something. Now, today we're going to talk about the difference between a mixed and a multiple schedule, a compound schedule. So there are 7 compound schedules of reinforcement. I'm just going to talk about 2 of them today that are very commonly confused. Maybe I'll throw in the third one of concurrent just because it works well here. So just note for you, if you ever want to make your handwriting look cute, you just do this. You put these little lines.
That's a solid throwback to middle school, like late 90s.
Oh, if you really want to make your notes look sick, you do this.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. That's where it's at right there. I'm going to ask Lauren to make it the next graphic like it's from the 90s.
I agree. Yeah, ask her. That's
with the bubble letters.
Uh-huh. Okay, so compound schedules. We're going to talk about 2 of them today. And my notes aren't as cute as usual. I usually like to ghost note it, but I told you, this is a test of like, do I know my shit, sleep deprived or not? We're going to talk about a mixed and a multiple schedule of reinforcement using my dog toys, which clearly have been, I bought them for my dogs, but now I'm starting to think they're like a business expense because I use them so much for teaching these examples and they're the best thing I've ever found. So let me tell you about these dog toys first. First of all, how they work. They sit on the floor like this. All right. They have little holes out the side. The behavior that needs to be engaged in is the dog has to knock it over, right? So they have to touch it in order for the pebbles to come out. My desk's gonna smell like dog food now, okay? So that's what the dog has to do. So let's just see if you guys actually do understand schedules of reinforcement. If the dog knocks this over and every time he knocks it over, food comes out, it's on what schedule of reinforcement?
Continuous.
Fixed.
What?
Continuous?
Continuous schedule of reinforcement, also known as a
R1.
Concurrent.
FR1, every single time you touch it, okay? So I could actually control what schedule of reinforcement my dog's gonna get by how big I open the door, right? If I make it a little thinner, it's harder to come out. So he might knock it 10 times. Oh, finally I got one out, okay? On a variable schedule. So I'm going to tell you first. So compound meaning more than one. There's more than one schedule going on. Actually, I think I should do the multiple side first. I think it would make more sense. So multiple schedule of reinforcement, meaning there's multiple schedules going on. Okay. And there is a yes, SD, right? A discriminative stimulus to let you know what's going on. And they might be on different schedules. So this is what in real life a multiple schedule looks like. So let's say I have these 2 toys. Can you tell that they're different, like the sizes? that would be a clear indicator SD for you, right? Like, okay, this is like having Liat as your teacher and Danielle as your teacher sometimes. Like when Liat's there, she reinforces me on a variable ratio 15. She barely answers me, but when Danielle's there, she answers immediately, right? So like this could either be two teachers, this could be two colored worksheets. Right now it's two different colors, I mean, two different size toys. If you guys could see the holes in them, this one I have on a thinner schedule of reinforcement, meaning the doors close a little more. It's going to take more to get the pebbles out. This one, they're going to come out easier, right? So a multiple schedule is two schedules that are not happening at the same time. All right. So I have Pavlov, my dog, and basically what multiple schedule is saying, it's saying in the presence of a different SD, there's going to be different schedules of reinforcement. So let's say Pavlov knows, all right, or we don't use the word knows, that's a mentalism, sorry, but that's essentially where it's going. When in the presence of the larger or this SD, he's reinforced on an FR1, right? It comes out every time. I don't know if you guys can see it. Yeah, there you go. Every time he knocks it, it's coming out. Now, on this other toy here, in the presence of that, when this one's not around, he knows it's less frequent. Not every time. Right? It's not coming out every time, it comes out sometime there. Okay. So that's the difference. First of all, that's a multiple schedule. In the presence of one SD, I'm down here still. In the presence of one SD, you're on one schedule. On the presence of another, you're on another schedule, right? It's engaging in the same behavior. The same thing goes. You're like, oh, right? If I get the green worksheet today for the Math Mad Minute, I know that I get reinforced for everyone I get right. If I got the yellow worksheet, it means I'm on an FR5. Every 5 I get right, I get a candy, right? That's what a multiple schedule is. It's just the idea that like in the presence of one SD, one teacher, one worksheet, the bigger versus the smaller of these dog toys, you're on a different schedule, okay? Really as simple as that. Now, a mixed schedule of reinforcement. We say it's the same as a multiple schedule, except your hashtag. I have two pens going on here. I don't know which one I'm using. Hashtag mixed up because there's no SD. So let's say we have the same one over here. There's no clear indicator of the SD. It's not like one day you're getting the smaller toy versus the bigger toy. It's like, and let's say the dog can't see this door. And by the way, I should have written this before on the multiple schedule. Oh, let me move that. What it was on before, it might have been written like this. When I showed you the two next to each other for multiple, it might have been multiple FR1, which was like the one schedule this was on. And then it might say multiple VR10. That's how it'd be written. Now, if we have mixed, I could write the same thing. Mixed FR1, VR10. But there's no clear indicator. Let's say it's all coming out of this one, okay? What it means is there's no clear indicator. Sometimes you get reinforced every time you do it, right? They're coming out. Sometimes it's on a VR10. You don't know, right? You have the same teacher every day. Sometimes she decides to reinforce you every time. Sometimes she doesn't. But there's no clear indicator as there was here when it was like a major difference. All right. So this is the compound schedules of mixed versus multiple. Why we say they're the same, but different. They're the same because they're not going on at the same time, right? Like in one time you might be on an FR1 schedule, one time you might be in a VR10. But the difference is there's a clear indicator in the multiple schedule letting you know what schedule you're on. Now there's one more that I'd be silly not to go over just because they're right here. So let's say you have these two schedules, right? I said, we're back to the beginning where you can see this hole's open much bigger, meaning it's going to be on a much more dense thick schedule of reinforcement. This one's going to be on a thinner schedule. There's something called, maybe one of you guys know, if you have them both available at the same time, what kind of compound schedule is that?
Concurrent?
Beautiful. It's something called a concurrent schedule, compound schedule of reinforcement. They're both available for you at the same time. Hashtag matching law, hashtag choice. You have these both available for you right now. Let's say it was something that was valuable to you, like money comes out of it or coins, okay? If you have these both available, I don't need you to understand behavior. I need you to understand common sense. Tell me, which one do you think you would spend more time doing? The
Big
large
one.
one or the smaller one?
The larger one.
Larger one.
The larger one, right? If there's money coming out, you are probably going to allocate more of your time, if not all of your time, towards this one. That's what a concurrent schedule of reinforcement is that in your environment at any given time, there's so many different things you can engage in. You could be here with me teaching you. You could be sitting on your phone scrolling through Instagram, right? But there's matching law in effect at all times, stating that behavior goes where reinforcement flows. What is valuable to you right now or what's offering more reinforcement, I'm assuming you're studying for the test that you're in here, right? Also understanding MOs, you're probably not going to be in here the day after you pass. You make a choice. So there's multiple schedules going on. Let's say there's these two. Let's say you could mow your neighbor's front yard, right? You have two neighbors, they live on the exact same half an acre of land, and your one neighbor pays you $200 for mowing their same size yard, and your other neighbor pays you $10. Whose yard do you think you're going to go mow? The $200 yard, right? So that's a concurrent schedule, meaning they're both available at the same time and you have to make a choice. All right. So these are happening at the same time for concurrent, con meaning together, current meaning together currently, right? For mixed and multiple, you're only seeing one at a time. Now for mixed, it'd probably be the same one looking the same all the time, but instead the door size is changing that someone can't see. So they don't know when it's going to be open fully, when it's going to be a thinner schedule of reinforcement, closed a little. That is the difference between these three. And I really like these toys because I feel like they really visually show the example. Now, is there anything, Casey or Danielle, that you feel like I could add to either of these? I guess I could write simultaneously and successively.
Yeah.
Yes, I would add that.
So concurrent means the two schedules are going on. I don't spell this. I'm really simultaneously. That's definitely not right. They're going on at the same time. You have to make that choice. Whereas mixed and multiple are successive, meaning not at the same time, like successive meaning like one after another. Maybe at one time you're in this schedule, then later you're on the other schedule. But these are important things to know for these three compound schedules. All right, those are the concepts that we've been at an hour now. We could take about 10 minutes to answer any questions on these topics that you feel like we might have missed. I'm going to go ahead and
stop the recording.
Stop the recording.
Thank you for coming. Mwah.
Thanks for coming, guys. Hopefully this was your first class. You enjoyed it. You learned something.